Chapter 2. Chapter 2. Try facing the wind. The wind. One of the most thrilling things in the field of practical religion is the way in which metaphysical students meet and overcome the difficulties and misadventures of human life. Because I am a minister of truth, many people tell me of their complicated problems and heartbreaking situations. Time and again, I am amazed at what human nature can take and awed by what it can accomplish with divine help. The life of the average individual moves in a little orbit of its own for long periods. He establishes a way of life made up of such factors as how he thinks, the way he lives, the manner in which he carries on the affairs of his daily life. He has his good days and his bad days, his success and his failures, his triumphs and his defeats. But the pattern as a whole is made up of more good than bad, more joy than grief, more pleasure than pain. His family is fairly well, his business holds its own, and his prospects are promising. But rare is the individual for whom that rhythm is not broken dramatically at some time. As suddenly as if a ship had hit a rock in a mid-ocean, tragedy strikes. Storms of many sorts sweep away all the years it built up. A business crisis ends disastrously. Disease reaches out. You are finished, said the doctor. You are washed up. Put your affairs in order, for you cannot live 6 months. Accidental death strikes down a member of the family. But truth students, despite adversity, go forward. Like great trees after a storm, they stand unmoved and unshaken. I should like to retell a little story that gives the title of this chapter. Hans was a shepherd boy. Every day he tended his father's sheep on the mountainside. On the last day of the old year, he led them to the south side of the mountain to get the last bit of grass before winter covered it with snow. Quite suddenly, out of the north, a storm blew up. Hans, knowing very well from experience what the hazards of a blizzard were, instantly called his dog to gather up the sheep. He, like every good shepherd, did not ordinarily drive his sheep but led them. But this day they were contrary and would not follow him against the blinding storm. Hans knew that he must keep them moving into the wind. His father had always told him that if the sheep faced away from the storm, the wind would blow under their wool, drive the snow and ice next to their skin, and it would freeze. The only hope of life was to head into the wind. So he called them, sent a dog to nip their heels, and made them face a storm. Fortunately, the direction of the storm was the way home too. With their heads down and their eyes closed, the sheep stumbled along, crowded against each other. Hans was out in the front, the driving snow beating onto his face. I must keep facing the wind, he kept saying to himself over and over. He did not know where he was or how far he had come. He ached with cold and tiredness, but he kept doggedly on, moving into the wind. Then he saw his father and his brother who had come out in search of them. When they sat down to a hot supper, his father said, "My son, we were all frightened for you." With tears glistening in his eyes, Hans answered, "But I did only what you taught me, Father. I kept moving into the wind." I kept moving into the wind. What a motto for these times. It reminds us of God's command to Moses, "Speak unto the children of Israel that they go forward." Going forward for them meant leaving the hardship and suffering of Egypt, but it also meant facing the peril of the Red Sea. We all know the story of the miraculous opening of the water and the passage on dry land to the promised land of milk and honey following their obedience to the command. But the capacity for obedience in both Hans and the children of Israel was the result of faith. Often we say, if I can just make this demonstration, if I can just get this answer, my faith will grow by leaps and bounds. What did Jesus say to the people of his day who marveled at the power of his word? All things, whatsoever ye shall ask in prayer, believing, ye shall receive. If you have faith, if we do not doubt, if we ask believing, we shall receive what we asked for in some form. In other words, faith precedes demonstration. The signs follow. St. Paul defined faith as the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. The disciples were terribly frightened during the storm on the Sea of Galilee. The heavens were darkened, the thunder boomed, the lightning flashed, and the winds blew. It was as though some mighty monster were trying to smash a little boat to splinters. Can you see Jesus as he walked across the deck of that boat with those terror-stricken sailors huddled under him? Can you hear his voice as he spoke the words, "Peace, be still"? Can you feel the calm that followed? A calm not only of the waters, but of those sturdy sunburned fishermen. They had entered a new dimension, the same dimension you and I must enter if we are to meet and survive the storms of contemporary human life. William James says much of the same thing in these words. No human being ever truly learns to live until he has awakened within himself the dormant powers lying there. I kept moving into the wind. What does the courageous, indomitable person find who rides the storms of human experience? He finds what Jesus said he would find, enormous reservoirs of power to meet any need. Some writers have likened these resources of power to a second, third, and fourth wind, but it is more than that. It is another dimension of mind, that dimension of which St. Paul spoke when he said, "I can do all things through Christ which strengthen me." How did St. Paul tap these tremendous sources of power? By developing a partnership with Christ. This is not the power of wind, water, or atom, but the power of God, the power that worketh in you. We do not have to beg God for power to meet our needs. All we have to do is to relax, recognize the power, and let it flow. But I always pray in the same way, and sometimes my prayers are not answered, you say. That may seem true to you, but sometimes you exercise real faith, and at other times you doubt subconsciously the truth of your statements. The result is different. Principle is unchangeable. Failure in prayer is failure in application. Ralph Waldo Emerson said, "Belief is absolutely necessary. No accomplishment, no assistance, no training can compensate for lack of belief." When you get into one of the storms we have been talking about and realize your lack of confidence, you can build faith or rebuild it at will. Say to yourself the words of the Father of the Son with a dumb spirit. "Lord, I believe. Help thou mine unbelief." Repeat the statement, "Lord, I believe," and feel the truth of what you say. This won't be easy at first, for your conscious mind will deny what you say and make itself known by such thoughts as these. Well, this is sheer nonsense. It is for children. There is nothing in it. You can't get through this storm. You haven't the strength. Go on and turn back. And what will you do then? You will be more persistent and fervent than ever. You'll keep saying, "Lord, I believe," despite all conflict, and slowly but surely your faith will grow. Saying "I believe" is not enough. If you leave the Lord out of your belief, it falls on stony ground. This is the point of which metaphysics differs greatly from psychiatry. To be effective, belief must start with God. It must be based on a power larger than the self. The difference between power and weakness is the spiritual factor. Why are so many people in mental hospitals today? Why are there so many psychologists and psychiatrists? Because humanity hasn't the spiritual strength to lean upon the higher power when adversity comes. When these storms arise, people tend to lose their sense of God's power to sustain them. But most of these storms, let us note, are of our own making. They are storms of guilt, fear, worry, jealousy, sickness, resentment, hate, conflict, infantile regression, and arrested development. They are the tumults in the mind and in the emotion. They are tempest in the soul. And who are the people who are most susceptible to neurosis, mental disease, and nervous breakdown? They are the people who live without God. The psychiatrist has many names for these disorders, but basically, they are the outcropping of immature and stunned souls. And the cure? We have it in the words of Isaiah. He will keep them in perfect peace whose mind is stayed on thee. How do you meet trouble when it comes to you? Do you fold up like a deflated balloon? Do you accept it with martyred resignation? Do you, like the frightened child, give up and run away? We are talking now about spiritual immaturity. We are talking about middle-aged people with adolescent thought patterns of adolescents who resort to 6-year-old behavior techniques. Do you remember how St. Paul talked to the congregation in Corinth? Virtually he said, "You are old enough to eat meat, but I still have to feed you with milk. You have never grown up spiritually. You are behaving still like children." Spiritual immaturity can be a costly thing. It is not only the cause of much of our sickness, but it is also one of the chief causes of alcoholism. Somewhere in the unfoldment of the victim of alcoholism, there is an arrested development. He has never quite grown up. He has never assumed adult responsibilities. Instead of facing his problems, he tries to run away. "Be your age" was one of the most forceful of slang expressions. Give the powerful possibilities in you a chance to grow along with your lengthening years. But the bargainer still says, "Oh Lord, if you will do this for me, I will do that for you." He tries to force things out of God instead of using his faith to attract his good. He has not learned that the true prayer is the realization that God already knows his needs and is ready to fulfill them. The successful prayer is based on faith that is already answered. "Before they call, I will answer, and while they are yet speaking, I will hear," is the promise. It doesn't make any difference what your stone wall or hurdle is. God's power will enable you to get over it. No situation is impossible. Jesus said, "All things are possible." Not a few things, but all things. Eliminate the word impossible from your vocabulary. Do you need a device to help you do this? Then take several little cards and write on them, "With God all things are possible," or "I can do all things through Christ which strengthen me." Scatter these cards around so that you will see them as you shave, and others you drive your car, and still another as you work at your desk at your office. Look at them during the day and keep repeating the statement to yourself until it forms a part of you and you believe it. Or here's another method for accomplishing the same purpose. Start on Monday morning to keep a careful record of the times you say or think that anything is impossible. Just before you go to bed, write the number down. On Tuesday, concentrate on reducing the number of times you say or think in terms of impossibility. Write that number down Tuesday night. Keep the practice up every day until you have eliminated this form of negative thought from your consciousness. It is true that the body and mind tend to respond to the pressure of crisis by releasing unsuspected powers. But why wait for a crisis to awaken your power? Why not release it and use it now? Why live in poverty in the midst of plenty? Why live in fear when security awaits you? Just recently I purchased a new car which has tremendous power. When I want to pass another car quickly, I push the accelerator down to the floor and the car fairly jumps out from under me. It is a wonderful feeling to be able to employ such power on the road, but there is an even greater power which is released through the acceleration of your mind. Start your day with an affirmation such as this: there is but one presence and one power in the universe. This power is all good. It is in me and I am in it. Then think of the many manifestations of this power. Think of the many ways in which you can use it. We boast about atomic power today, but it is weak compared to the power that Jesus ascribed to faith. Yes, my friend, you are equal to any vicissitude or circumstance that may ever come to you. Almighty God will never permit any trouble to come into your life that you cannot face and overcome if you cooperate with Him and have faith. This is not a faith of presumption or credulity, but a faith that transcends hope and fulfills expectation. Just as Cardozo said, we are what we believe we are. Each man has his own capacity. You can accomplish no more than you believe you can. But if you believe, you can do all things. These words of Isaiah are comforting today. Be strong, fear not. Behold, your God will come and save you. We know that the promise means that He will release the power of good into our affairs, that He will save us from whatever we need to be saved from. The challenge is threefold. Buttress your faith. Keep doggedly moving into the wind and rise steadily to a higher level of maturity, to a more efficient use of your spiritual power. We do not know what a day may bring forth, but on one thing we are sure. There will be mountains to climb, bridges to build, hardships to endure, crosses to carry, and burdens to bear. How we meet these problems will be determined by our faith. If we move forward, facing each problem as it comes in faith and belief, we shall weather every storm and overcome every difficulty. If you can, but if you believe, you can do all things. Strong, fear not. Behold, strong, fear not. Behold, your God will come and see you can. But if you believe, you can do all things. As we move forward, facing each problem as it comes in faith and belief, we shall weather every storm and overcome every difficulty. Difficulty.